Coming up on this week's FAS TV, we are back on Skye to hear from Shelagh Parlane, RSPB Corncrake Project Officer, and Jamie MacInnes, who is part of the Skye FAS Connect group. Over the years, Corncrake's numbers have declined. However, there is an active population on Skye, which has seen Shelagh and crofters working together to understand how the Corncrakes are utilising Skye during the summer months. Over the years, Corncrake numbers have declined, with active populations in the West Coast Islands, including Skye and Tiree.
Well, my name is Shelagh Parlane. I work for the RSPB on the Isle of Skye as the Corncrake Project Officer. It's very varied, but because corncrakes are agricultural birds, it's largely outside on crofts or farms and working with crofters and farmers. I suppose that's the thing about my job. I actually work year round, but the corncrakes appear back in Skye in late April. They are here until late September, maybe into October. But so there's 6 months of the year that they're not here, that I'm also working. But when they arrive back, we know they've come because of their distinctive night calling. That's the sign that they're back. And that's also when I suppose I turn a little bit nocturnal in that. My only contact with the actual birds is hearing their calls, and the way we monitor how many birds are out there is by going out at night and listening where they are, getting a location of where the bird is calling from. Largely the males, it's mainly the males that do calling. We've been collecting data like this using the standard survey method for 30 years now, all over Scotland we use the same methodology, so we can have, it's not an absolute number we get, it's more like an index, but if we're using the same method or the same time period, the same hours of night, every place that we do it and every year, then at least we have a comparable kind of index of what's going on.
An important group that Shelagh is working with is the FAS Connect Skye group, which is made up of local crofters and farmers who have helped collect information about callings and sightings. This group also gives Shelagh the opportunity to hear about what is happening within the agricultural industry.
Well, FAS Connect has been a real asset for us at the RSPB because we need to work with crofters and farmers, and FAS Connect has been an excellent entry into that world. And also we attend meetings. The meetings are very informative. I learn very much about agricultural, kind of what's going on in the agricultural world from these meetings. I was lucky enough to be able to give a small presentation at one of the FAS Connect meetings earlier this year, and that was an excellent way for me to make contact with the crofters just before the corncrakes appeared back in Skye. So it could bring it into their minds, and they knew, we could get a communication going between the crofters. If they get a corncrake, who to contact, what we'd like them to do. It was a really excellent opportunity for us.
The availability of modern technology has allowed farmers and crofters to record corncrake callings to pass on to Shelagh. With these callings, Shelagh has been able to track individual birds throughout Skye by having a better understanding of the corncrake's call patterns.
I think over the years it used to be the old style, phone or email or whatever, but because it wasn't the first thing that people thought about when they heard corncrake, what's Shelagh's number, blah 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 blah. So the introduction of smartphones really was a bit of a game changer for us. But so in terms of communicating with me through WhatsApp or whatever it is, it's just really easy to say, oh, I heard a corncrake. The other thing is that using smartphones, we discovered that we could actually make recordings of the birds that were good enough to do some technical analysis on, and in some kind of way identifying individual birds. There aren't many corncrakes in the Isle of Skye, as we know. We really struggle to keep the population or to grow the population, but one big advantage of that is if we've only got 20 birds, 30 birds, we can actually identify individuals and trace them through the season using recordings that we've made on mobile phones. And the crofters have been instrumental to this, that they hear the corncrake, they take a recording of it, fire it through to me. My friend Robert Arnold does this fancy analysis, and we get a little call pattern for that bird, and we can tell where it moves around through the season, whether it's still calling, sometimes we just lose them completely, so they might have they might have died, they might have gone to use, we don't know that, but it helps us build a picture about what is happening with the corncrakes, which always helps with the management. So there was one appeared early in the year in Lennoxrow up near Whitewave, and so it stayed there for a while. We had recordings of it, and then it kind of went quiet, lost track of it, but about 2 weeks later we turned up at the Monkstad Road end, and then it's called there for a small period, and then the next thing we found it in the Monkstad silage fields, which was it's kind of interesting to see the movement, because that indicates it might have actually left a female with a nest every time it moves, so that's really useful to know. But also we knew when they were starting to move into the silage field, so that's when we can start kicking in with the wildlife friendly mowing and things like that, once the birds start showing up there, and the nest could be in those silage fields. There's another wee story though about the corncrakes. It was in Idrigal. There's a little field, a tiny little field, and one night I got a recording of a bird there, and just assumed there was one bird. The next night I went back the next night, took a recording, turns out it's a different bird, which we only knew through that recording. Anyway, they called for a short period, then absolutely nothing, and it was all surrounded by houses. I assumed something bad had happened to them when they went quiet, but it was really nice because they did show up again in Scooterborough, where we're going this afternoon, and then it moved through the Toatscourt area. But the really exciting thing about that was that about 30 days since they stopped calling, a female started calling in Idrigal. It's really unusual for females to call, and it's actually a sign that they're looking for their mate. It's a sign of, it's not a good thing if the females are calling, because they're emulating the males to try and bring a male into them. It's a very rare thing. But anyway, this female was calling in Idrigal, which indicates that those males had in fact bred in Idrigal, and then they'd moved off to Scooterborough. So hopefully that female did manage to skip over the hill and find her mates again. Anyway, it's things like that that we learn through just the calls, and if we didn't have the call patterns, we didn't have that analysis, we just wouldn't know. Well, it really helps because we understand where there's likely to have been breeding, in which case we can target resources and, you know, ask for the special wildlife friendly mowing, or, you know, encourage that to go on in a field. If we know the corncrake has been there, even though it's gone quiet, might have moved, we know where it's gone, we can at least go back to the original field and say, no, there were corncrakes there. As soon as the first corncrakes start arriving, say late April, I'll hear, someone will tell me, it's not that I'll be the first to hear the birds, and I will start going out at night, just whenever it gets dark. So at that time of year it's probably 10:30, and trying to get recordings and find out where exactly the birds are, and from then on I will be checking the townships. I'll be following up reports and any information on where the birds are throughout the whole season. So basically it's at night I'll be out, again trying to get the recordings, trying to find out exactly which fields they're using so we can target resources into management. But that goes on through the year. By the time we get to June, of course, it's midnight. You know, it's not dark till midnight, so going out at midnight till about 3 AM. But it's very, very beautiful. I mean, it's a fantastic time to be out and about. You see some amazing things. You know, it's never disappointing.
Sheila is involved in a number of projects which help collect vital information about the corncrake population on the Isle of Skye.
So the Skye Crofting and Corncrake Partnership is a partnership between the RSPB Scotland, SAC Consulting, NFUS and SCF. The Skye Crofting and Corncrake Partnership has allowed us to have input into the crofting activities that can enhance wildlife and crofting for corncrakes. Corncrake Calling Project was a project that we set up because we were lucky enough to gain funding from the National Heritage Lottery Fund to work directly with crofters on habitat management and mowing styles, basically to really expand our reach in terms of the corncrake message. And it also provided opportunities to work more with the community in terms of education and raising awareness generally about corncrakes. But from an RSPB point of view, just the contact through FAS Connect, through the National Heritage Lottery funding, Corncrake Calling, we really have managed to raise our game, I think, with corncrakes here in Isle of Skye.
There are a number of practices which crofters can do if they think corncrakes are present on their croft.
If there are any crofters or farmers who have corncrakes on their land, then I suppose the first thing you might want to do is contact your local SAC office or the RSPB and for any advice that we might be able to give you on how to promote their chances of breeding successfully on their ground. Oh, and if you are hearing a corncrake, yes, please report to your local surveyors through the RSPB, or we all have contacts on Instagram and Facebook and everything nowadays, so it's really easy to contact us. I was going to say one other thing, that something is, if you have a nice healthy bit of grassland and you're in a corncrake area, never assume you don't have birds in it, because they disperse later on in the season. Even though they might not have nested in your field, the young, the adults after they're molted, could be using your grassland. So remember the wildlife friendly mowing.
Active crofting is vital for the survival of corncrakes in Scotland. Unfortunately, the corncrake is rare and the number of breeding pairs has fallen over the years. Crofts provide the perfect habitat for the birds.
The corncrakes are birds that rely on agriculture, and so active crofting is key to their survival. If we don't have active crofting, the system, the low intensity beef farming system that is part of the West Coast, where there's cattle around, you need to grow a winter fodder in the summer, so that's providing nice grass habitat for the corncrakes. The animals come on at late season and they're putting manure back into the ground, they're trampling the old rank grasses that have grown up, they clear out ready for next year. Basically, without that going on, we wouldn't have corncrakes. Well, nowadays, first of all, corncrakes would have been all over mainland Scotland, the mainland of the UK, 150 years ago, but their range is contracted now to, it's basically the West Coast Islands, Skye, Durness is probably the last actual mainland population. Orkney will have some. So, and there'll be the odd scattering that show up in other areas, but they're not there every year and they're probably just passing through. So corncrakes are extremely rare. they're rare birds on a national level, but on Skye they're extremely rare. We have, in the last few years, we've had in the region of between 10 and 15 males calling. This year, just through our calls project, we know we've had at least 20 birds. But I think through the survey done in its very specific kind of regime, giving us this index, we're probably coming out at 14 calling males this year.
The engagement of farmers and crofters is vital for Shelagh to understand how the corncrakes are spending their time on Skye. Jamie MacInnes is part of the FAS Connect group and has been helping collect callings from corncrakes.
Lived in Tuscarora all my life, born and brought up here. Started working for Andrew MacDonald, who bought Scooterville Farm in 2014, and yeah.
How many cattle are there on the farm?
Cattle, we have summer grazing for the cows on the hill. We have 20 cows on the hill, summer grazing. 200 sheep. Andrew owns the sheep himself.
So what kind of cattle do you have on the farm?
Yes, we have Shorthorn and Simmertal Cross, and there's a few Cross Highlands as well. Yeah.
Right. So you have to grow fodder for them in the winter here. They don't go away for the winter.
No, so I have to make silage here. Yeah, yeah.
In 2014, when Andrew took over the farm and you started managing the land, I remember we came over here to create Corncrake early cover, because the whole farm was going into a agri-environment scheme for corncrakes, and we created a nettle bed. Do you remember that?
Yes, that's right. Yes, I remember. Yeah.
What did you think about that at the time?
At the time, yeah, it was something very different to what I was used to.
Why was that?
I've never heard of planting nettles. It's always planting grass seed or something that would grow and you'd be able to feed your animals, livestock on it.
So yes, but that was done for the agri scheme, and some years have passed. There was no corncrakes using this farm before that started, and now you had 2 this year, didn't you? And you've had them consistently over the last few years.
Yeah, it's quite amazing to see that some nettles and cover and fenced areas, that how it all works.
Yes.
very good.
Well, it's thanks to your work. It's your management that's allowed that to happen. It's really something.
Yeah, it's been interesting, and it's been nice to work with Shelagh and Jeanette.
In terms of the changes to your management, has it been very different doing work for the Corncrakes as what you would have done if there'd been no Corncrake scheme?
Yeah, things have been difficult at different times, and it's hard to get.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, just to adapt to some new ideas or whatever.
New ideas, that's the sort of thing. Yeah.
Although I suppose the really old ideas, the Corncrake ideas, in some ways, aren't they?
Well, but some of them are, but
maybe not the nettles.
Yeah, it's.
But Skye Farm and yourself, you kind of embraced all of that and took it on board. And the other thing you're really brilliant at is the Corncrake friendly mowing, the wildlife friendly mowing from the inside out. Has that created a lot of work for you?
The mowing, yes, created a lot more time when you're running with the weather on Skye here. But if it helps save the Corncrakes and keep more of them coming to Skye, it'll be worth it. So,
yeah, we've had great success. You've had great success in this farm attracting Corncrakes into the habitat. And you've also been super helpful to me with our trying to identify individual Corncrakes by making recordings. So when you hear a Corncrake on the farm, what do you do?
When I hear a Corncrake, I automatically pull my phone out of my pocket right away, get on to record, and if it's a video or voice, whatever I can get at the quickest moment, it's on there, and then I send it over to Shelagh right away so she can get an identification of that Corncrake. Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic. It's a fantastic help to us tracking where the individual birds come from or go to. A couple of years ago, your birds had come from Idrigal, so we knew that they'd possibly been nesting in Idrigal, come over to Skye and were nesting again. So it was really helpful.
Oh yes, it's amazing how technology is helping everybody now.
I remember you hosted a FAS Connect meeting, a really great one, a month or two ago.
Yeah.
And in your shed. And do you remember what happened there?
Yeah. Oh yes. Yeah. We were having the meeting, and there was a Corncrake calling outside the shed, non-stop. In fact, most of the whole meeting he was calling the whole meeting, and yeah, it was very good. But there was an awful racket with them starlings inside, so we couldn't get a good recording.
But it was a wildlife intense kind of meeting, wasn't it?
Oh yes, really, it was. Yeah.
Everybody was immersed in the wildlife.
Yeah. Oh yes, it was good.
It was very good. It's been really, really helpful, all of the recordings of your Corncrakes that you've been sending me over the years. Is there anything that you could say to other people who wanted to do that to help?
Yes. Watch how you're recording it with sound in the background, and if there's loads of other birds around you, it doesn't record very good. You've got to have a clear, no birds basically in the background.
And I know we're not encouraging people to disturb Corncrakes, but if you just the closer the better, will give a clearer recording. But you're out in the fields, so right beside the birds. Yeah,
you better to record if you can get out in the field, out into the field, but don't disturb it too much, and try and get a clear recording of it, and then send it to my local RSPB.
These fancy phones, the iPhones and what have you, are so good at picking up, voices, and they have this thing called a sound reduction on it, which means if you're out on a windy day, the phone can hear what you're saying, but that's really bad if you're trying to record a Corncrake. So ideally, we switch the noise reduction off on the phone, so it's actually collecting all the noise that's out there.
Really? Didn't know there was such a thing.
Nah, most didn't, yeah.
Right.
It's just one of these things I've learned from this, but these phones are really powerful. In terms of that nettle bed, the early cover that you created, has over the years, have you had to do anything else to it to keep it in good condition?
Yeah, putting more dung on it and stuff helped. It really helped, and grazing it out of November time, when there's no birds nesting, it really helps the regrowth come back again cleaner for the birds to nest in, you know, for the corncrake to nest in, sorry. Yeah.
Absolutely,
Yes.
yeah, it's really important to do that. And the animals would go into that area, no problem?
No, I have to put them in, yeah, I have to push a few in. I can't put many in at one time. But I put them in for so long, take them out and put them back in and yeah, just work it, yeah.
Well, it's obviously working, it's really good. So it's basically, yeah, you keep a bit more manure going into it to keep up the fertility.
Yes.
Graze it out in the winter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it seems to come back and yeah. I wish the whole farm would grow like that. Now, you know, it's lovely grass in there. And
so FAS Connect developed a little tool, a little phone app about how to manage early cover. You clearly are doing it just perfectly, but for people less experienced, there's a tool, an app created by FAS Connect, where people can show pictures of their early cover and get feedback on how they might improve it. Do you think that's a useful thing for people that maybe are new to growing nettles?
definitely, yeah, I think so. The more help that you know, if you can send stuff, yeah, it'd be really good. Yeah, I think for people starting up from scratch, yeah,
Yes.
it'd be a really good thing, you know.
Hello, good morning. My name's Colin Mason. I am one of the vets that works for SRUC, and this is our February monthly disease update. I want to cover a couple of subjects today, and although we're standing in a dairy cattle shed to sort of shelter from the windy, stormy weather outside, I want to talk about two conditions of sheep today, and particularly focusing on conditions of finishing lambs. There's still quite a lot of late season finishing lambs in the system at the moment, and these two conditions focus on those lambs. Just a couple of things that we've seen in recent weeks through our surveillance network and through our vet labs. So one is actually nitrate poisoning, and we see this fairly rarely, to be honest. So it's actually quite a rare diagnosis for us, and it was colleagues in the borders that saw this. And it was seen particularly in a load of finishing lambs that were put onto a field of turnips. And I guess with the way the weather has been in recent weeks and months, there's been frosts and then thawing and everything else. And what we know is that sometimes if the plant is stressed, then they fail to convert or don't convert as well the nitrates that they pick up from the soil into plant protein. And what had happened in this particular case is the farmer had let these sheep onto a whole field of turnips rather than strip grazing them, which meant that the sheep went on, they ate all of the turnip tops pretty quickly that had high nitrate levels in them, and that caused a spike in mortality in these particular sheep. So it's worth bearing this one in mind. There's a couple of take-home messages to take from this. Firstly, there's still a lot of turnips out there that are going to get eaten off between now and the start of spring. If you're putting your lambs onto turnips, is to make sure that they are only on for a short period of time to start off with. They don't get access to the whole field, and ideally that they're strip grazed. And I know that that can be quite a pain sometimes, just in getting the time and the effort and the labour to move electric fences, particularly for sheep. But it's just to restrict access, particularly to the turnip tops to start off with, to make sure that these sheep are not eating too much of them too quickly. The other thing I guess to think about is to investigate any sudden or unexpected deaths or spikes in mortality in these lambs, just to make sure that we know what's going on. The thing with nitrate poisoning is that it can often present with lambs that initially clinically would be short of breath, and then that becomes a sort of a fatal lack of oxygen fairly quickly. So they may present as respiratory disease to start off with, and you may see these lambs that are actually panting, but ultimately it's important from an investigation point of view to distinguish this condition from other causes of respiratory disease that we might see in lambs. So the second condition that I want to just talk about with regard to finishing lambs, particularly applies to lambs that are away at wintering, often on quite lush grazing fields, particularly in dairy country where we are now. In Dumfries and Galloway, we've got a lot of hill blackie lambs coming down onto dairy pasture for the winter. They'll be heading back home towards the end of March. So what we see is when these lambs grow really quickly after a period of grazing lush pasture, their bone growth sometimes doesn't keep up with their muscle growth. And particularly at this time of year where we're at times of low sunlight, their vitamin D levels in their ration can be quite low. We rely on sunlight to synthesize vitamin D in our skin, actually, and that synthesis of vitamin D is pretty low at the moment because of a lack of sunlight in the depths of winter. Therefore, we rely on the vitamin D coming from the diet, and it's important to ensure that these lambs are fully supplemented with vitamin D. So things to look out for will be lambs that have a slightly stiff gait. Occasionally we see what we might call pathological fractures, where you suddenly see a lamb that goes off its legs and has actually fractured a limb. And you sometimes only notice some of the gait changes when lambs actually are gathered, and sometimes actually when they're gathered to go back to their source farm and their home farm at the end of the winter. And obviously what we need to be careful about is not to confuse this condition with foot lameness in sheep, which is far more common, and again is to investigate causes of lame sheep, to look firstly for the common foot lesions and to see if they're present, but also to look for this stiffness and slow gait. Sometimes as well you see the legs slightly splayed out to the side, so you sometimes see slight growth deformities as well. So it's just something to be aware of. It's something that we see, and it's probably underdiagnosed, I would imagine, in that we'll see the really extreme cases, but we'll not see perhaps the more subtle cases. And it's really important to consider vitamin D supplementation. Are they getting enough vitamin D in the ration if they're getting supplementarily fed? So is there enough vitamin D in the mineral? Or are they getting an oral supplement or potentially an injectable supplement to boost their vitamin D levels? So it is something to think about, particularly for away wintering lambs at this time of year. So thanks for listening. If you have any concerns or queries, first of all, contact your vet, and through SRUC Vet Services, we work with your vets to help advise on any diagnostic investigation or workup of these cases. For more information, please go to fas.scot. Thank you very much.